Hey, welcome to A Cup of Coffeyville, where we fill your cup with everything Coffeyville. Today, we're talking about a historic treasure in downtown Coffeyville, the Midland Theater. And with us, we have Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Scheck, and I love the Midland. And if you ever catch me and want to talk about it, I'm always available for a tour and can walk people through. So I'm more used to actually showing everything off as I walk through. So this is a completely new thing for me.
It's different.
This is different.
We're all good. We're just having a conversation, right?
Yes.
So what is your role with the Midland?
So I'm the president of the Midland Theater Foundation.
Okay.
Yes, and I've actually been in this role. I think I'm in my second, going into probably my third year of being president. And I joined the Midland Theater Foundation in 2016. So
Okay.
I've been part of it for
Several years now.
almost 10 years.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So if I'm new to Coffeyville, I've just been here a couple of years. I don't even know what the Midland is. What is the Midland? Where is it
Right.
at?
So the Midland's in downtown Coffeyville. It's on 8th Street. It's right by the post office. It's right across from the Union Pacific Park, Pocket Park, right there. It's in a great location, and it's the iconic Midland Theater. We have a beautiful marquee. We have the front with, if you come on a night that we have it turned on, it lights up downtown. It's beautiful. We're actually really popular with people taking photos in front of the Midland because it's such an iconic thing. It's, it's almost 100 years old. So it just has that very vintage nostalgia feel when you see the Midland Theater.
So almost 100 years old.
Yep.
What's the history of the Midland in Coffeyville? How did it come to be? What have we done with it for 100 years? When was it shut down? Maybe we can talk some of that.
Absolutely.
That historical timeline.
And those are kind of some things that a lot of the community doesn't realize is the true depth of history that the Midland has. So it was opened in 1928. It was originally opened as a vaudeville theater. And for anyone who doesn't know what vaudeville is, it was musical variety shows. They brought a little bit of this and a little bit of that to the stage, anything from comedy and music to dancers and magic. They had a little bit of everything wrapped into a variety show. And in 1928, motion pictures, movies, those weren't the popular thing in the Midwest. It's not like it is today. Very different world back then. Technology was coming in from the coasts and it would eventually make its way here to the Midwest. And so at that time, they built the Midland Theater to be a vaudeville theater. So our stage is large enough to have a stage production. And then as moving pictures, silent movies, moving pictures became more popular and more prevalent, and that technology made its way to Coffeyville, they turned it into a movie theater. They actually, around the 1930s and 1940s, they elongated the stage and they covered what was the orchestra pit. And then there was a grand chandelier that hung in our auditorium. They took it down because it kind of obscured the view from the balcony and the projector booth of the actual, screen on the stage. And they dropped a screen down and they had movies running, I think, every day of the week. We've gone through and looked at old newspaper clippings and looked at the shows that were playing and the movies that were going on. And it's really cool to think that Coffeyville at one point had 4 movie theaters. And now today we don't have any. So Coffeyville was pretty booming in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, and well over 20,000 population. And they packed the house at each one of those movie theaters. When it was first opened, the Midland was the most expensive, the most elegant theater in Coffeyville.
Okay.
It drew people from all over. People would drive from Tulsa. And at that point, you weren't driving 70 miles an hour, correct? You were going,
So it was a trip.
It was a trip and it was a haul. And one of the organists actually would come down from Tulsa every day and play the organ at the Midland because it was such a prominent theater at that time. So the history that's wrapped into the walls of the Midland is incredible. And
100 years. So
yeah.
When did it close then?
So it actually closed in 1998. Okay. So it ran for 70 years. And it changed hands a few times. So when it was first opened, it was opened by John Tackett. And he had this vision of what this theater could become. and he actually put a ballroom in the front of the house, and that's we'll get to that later. But the ballroom in the front of the house, the intention was you would have live performances going on stage, and then you'd take an intermission. You'd go up to the ballroom, and you might have reception or beverages and food, and you might have a small dance going on. And then when intermission was over, you'd go back and you'd watch the rest of the performance. And
so is a ballroom unique to this theater?
The ballroom,
was that something in theaters across the country?
It's very unique. They do not have a lot of spaces like what we have in our movie theater. So as the theater kind of transitioned hands throughout the years, and then it became a true movie theater, the lack of need of a ballroom diminished, and it became more of a storage facility. So we've kind of uncovered that, and it's a rare thing in downtown Coffeyville.
It went from people wearing suit coats and dresses
Absolutely.
to shorts and flip-flops,
Yes.
this transition over that 70
I
some
believe
odd
that
years.
the prices of tickets that I've seen were like 25 cents, but the other theaters were more like 10, 15, maybe even a nickel in price. And in the 1920s, 25 cents per ticket, you were going to be dressing up and going for a night out on the town. So it was a sight to be seen. We, because we're restoring it, of course, the crown molding and the chandeliers that we have in the space are beautiful. And so you can feel the elegance when you walk into the Midland Theater.
So let's maybe talk about some people, famous people
Yes.
along the way, some that people may still know today, some that people may have forgotten. What's the people of the Midland?
I mentioned John Tackett earlier. He was a photographer, and he was most well known as the photographer of the Dalton Raid. So he actually, he was the original owner of the Midland, and that was in 1928. But you go a few years earlier, and he was the photographer of the Dalton Raid. So he took the
Coffeyville's
iconic,
very famous for,
and he took that photo of the Dalton gang laid out, which is the one that I think everyone has in their minds when they remember the Dalton gang laid out in the alley.
Kind of a gruesome job.
It's a morbid, the morbid photographer that he was apparently, but it was kind of his start to claim to fame there. Later on, when he opened the Midland, he actually opened the Midland, and then pretty soon after, like a year or two later, he sold it to the Fox Theater Corporation. And Fox Theaters, they not only made the movies, they also had all the movie theaters, and they got told by the government, hey, this is a monopoly. You can't have all these theaters across the country and also be playing the same, your movies. So you gotta sell some things around. So in 1950s to 1960, I think it was 1960, Pearl and Tal Richardson purchased the theater from the Fox Corporation.
I've heard Pearl's name a lot.
Pearl is what everyone remembers. The generations that are still around that have all those memories tied to the movie theater, they remember Pearl. She was just an iconic figure in Coffeyville. She drove I think it was a Cadillac, and she would park in front of the theater, and then her employees would come out and they would move it for her. They'd park it down the street in a special parking spot, and then she would sit in that ticket booth, and rain or shine, she was there selling tickets.
She was the one selling the tickets.
She was the
wasn't
one
in the
in
back of the house or somewhere.
She was the
She
one
really
that
was
you
the
would
face
see.
of it. Yeah.
She was the face. And so people would drive downtown Coffeyville because, during this time, cruising downtown was pretty important, and a big aspect of, nightlife was, cruising the Ville, I guess you would call it. And she'd be there sitting in the ticket booth. And I think what added to that elegance of the Midland was her persona, what she presented to the public. Her hair was always done. Her makeup was always done. She was always dressed in these suits that she had tailored for her. She always wore her jewelry, and everything about her was like a movie star. And so she sat there in that ticket booth selling tickets, afternoons, evenings.
Now, did she still have a part in the VOD era, or was she more the movie era?
No, she was the movie era. Okay. So the VOD era kind of ended like the late 1920s, 30s was when they really just started sticking to just the movies, and it transitioned out of being the live performances to more of the movies. That was what was popular, and the technology was readily available, to the Midwest and to a lot of the smaller facilities. It became more or less expensive, I guess, to put into those movie houses, and so then, like I said earlier, they covered the orchestra pit so they could have a longer stage and get the screen closer to the audience. Okay. The sound aspects came into play, just the speakers and the acoustics and everything kind of were brought into the theaters, and then movies just... the technology took off during that time. And so by the time that Pearl and Tal came into the picture in 1960, movies were, what was the big nightlife, right? You were coming to see all the latest and greatest movies in the 1960s. Pearl and Tal would actually go to all the Hollywood junkets. So those press conferences and movie premieres. So there's pictures of Pearl and Tal with like Jack Lemmon and doing those events. And then they would bring that stuff home with them, and the movie posters, and they would set up the lobby to look like little scenescapes or tablescapes, kind of like decorating the lobby for certain movies. So we have some photos of that too, which is kind of cool. So they'd make it an experience, and not just you were coming to the movies, but a whole experience. If there was a movie about a race car, they would have maybe someone, drive a race car up to the front of the theater, and then inside it would be the black and white checkered flags. And so we have some photos of that, which is
fun. That's a lot of fun.
Which is fun to look through and see that history.
What was the end for the Midland? Was Pearl still there?
So actually, Tal passed away, I think, within 10 years of owning the theater, and she owned it, and she ran it until she passed away. So in the 90s, and really probably starting in the 80s and 90s, the Midland is a large venue. It is, it's a historical venue. We know that. And in those 80s and 90s, it needed a lot of work. And it started declining in what could be done, on the outside and on the inside, electrical components and the new technology that was coming out. It was having trouble keeping up. And in the 80s, B&B Theater came into Coffeyville and put in their 2-screen theater. So then they had a little competition. I guess I should back up and say those 4 theaters that were all in Coffeyville, 3 of them closed. It was, I think, the Columbia, the ISMO, and the Tackett. John Tackett had 2 theaters, and then the Midland. And so the 3 had closed, and they don't, their spaces actually don't even exist anymore. I think they were demolished throughout the years. Okay. And then the Midland exists, and B&B Theater came in. And so they had a higher level of technology at the B&B Theater. And so it just kind of, I think the Midland just struggled to keep up with technology advances and the cost of running a facility, and it was just Pearl. And she was in her later years, and it got to the point where it was too much for her to care for on her own, and she recognized that. So she worked with the city to say, I'm going to give you this theater, and I'm going to, I guess, deed it to the city, and if you can help me run it, I will continue to run it as much as I possibly can. You're going to own it and possibly help me, because this is good for the community to have a movie theater. And unfortunately, she passed within a year of that transition happening. And so when she passed, the doors to the Midland closed.
So it was in the possession of the city at that time?
Yes.
Doors are now closed.
Doors are now closed. It's 1998, and I think the last movie closed was Mouse Hunt. I think we had that movie theater actually hung up in the Midland for a long time before we actually took it down for construction work happening. But it was.
So what's that timeline then? So she's deeded it over to the city.
1997, 1998.
And then
the doors closed.
For how long were they closed before your board came involved here?
Until 2023, really.
Really?
That was
the whole time.
People were in and out, of course, but nothing was really considered truly open. I mean, so in 2004 was when Kenneth Birchinall came to the city and said, he was the cultural arts director, and he was also a theater director, and he had been a teacher. And so a lot of people in the community will remember that name, Kenneth Birchinall. Okay. He came to the city and presented them a plan to create the Midland Theater Foundation. And at that time, he had a small group of people that he had kind of rallied together to say, let's save this, let's build it into something amazing. And the city agreed, and they allowed the formation of a nonprofit. The Midland Theater Foundation is a 501c3.
This is 2004.
This is around 2000, and it probably happened a little bit before 2004, but I think actually changed hands from the city then to the Midland in 2004. So the Midland Theater Foundation, when I say Midland, I mean the Theater Foundation and the building kind of all in one. Okay. But it changed hands and went to the foundation. They started a capital campaign at that time. They contracted with an architectural firm out of Kansas City and started putting together ideas. Around that same time, they were also given the facility that sits next door, kind of in between the post office and the Midland, is what was called the Alamo Building. Okay. So around that same time, they had some big grand plans of making an event center and rehabbing and restoring the Midland Theater, and it was a lot. I mean, in 2004. It was kind of from the ground up. Nobody knew really what they were doing. They were going to try to reopen the theater, and people hadn't been inside for, what was that, about 8 years, 6 to 8 years that people, since the doors had closed, no work had been done. And remember, it had needed a lot of work prior to its closing as it was. Yeah. So they were kind of on a shoestring budget, getting in some small grant funding, some donations, and trying to put the money to work immediately. And it was a slow process. And so there were a lot of people in Coffeyville who maybe donated in those early years of the Midland Theater Foundation, but felt like it didn't go anywhere. Well, it did. It's a big project, and it's going to take a lot of money to get those doors reopened, to have a movie theater again. And in those early years, it was slow moving. And they worked their tails off in those early years. And then unfortunately, Kenneth Birchinall passed away around I think it was like 2011, 2012. And the board tried to continue on, but he was really that glue in those early years. He was the force behind the Theater Foundation. And so it got to the point where it kind of sat stagnant for a few years. And then
after the board took it.
Yes. Okay. So those middle years.
Still a board at that point.
There was still a board. It was just slow moving. People were kind of. It had probably a high turnover rate, I'd say. People were coming onto the board and then dropping off the board and trying to figure out what the finances were and what the direction was, and it just kind of was a little bit. I keep go back to slow moving. Okay. And I don't want to take away anything from those people who sat on the board at the time, because now we look back and we're so thankful for all those years of effort and the blood, sweat, and tears that went into the building in those foundation years early on. But we've really felt like in the last several years, there's been, whether it's just the world today or just the different people and skills that we've brought onto the Midland Theater Foundation now, but we feel like we're picking up pace and we're moving.
So I've heard people talk about that. So what we're saying is for 20 years, there's been a foundation trying to do something. And so sometimes there's some, I'm going to call it undercurrent of thoughts. And so maybe they don't understand what's going on now, where we're at today.
Exactly.
So here you got 2006, you said, to 2011. When did the spark hit? And because you've come a long way in the last few years. So what eventually changed that slow moving to be able to spin it around?
I'm not sure what the ultimate catalyst was. I moved back to Coffeyville in 2016. I'd lived elsewhere for about 10 years in Kansas City, and my husband and I, we were ready to start our family, and we decided we wanted to be, well, for me, back home, and he's from a small town, so we decided to move back to Coffeyville. And at that time, I told him, there's this really cool old building in Coffeyville, and when we move back, I want to get involved in it, and I want to help him, try to set a new path for this because, this theater is so cool. And, how awesome would it be to have this, amazing movie theater back?
Now, do you remember it?
I would go to matinees when I was a kid.
Okay, so you'd been in there.
Of course, that was the late 80s, early 90s. And again, it was sticky floors and, the movies weren't as great. So I think sometimes my mom preferred to take us to like the B&B theater or maybe even drive to Bartlesville where the newer theaters were. Because the Midland was very big and it was an older theater and the bathrooms were upstairs and it kind of, at that point, it probably had a little bit of that like mildew smell of just years and years of
built for a different era.
I like that.
Now.
Yeah, a lot of different changes. And so I remember going to the Tuesday matinees, and the ticket prices were so cheap, and they played always the kids' movies at those matinees. So I remember going in it, and it had that larger than life feeling when you were inside of it. And so when we moved back, I told my husband, I'm just going to bombard this board meeting. I know when it is, and I'm just going to attend. They said I can go to it. So I went, and it was right around the time that some of the board members who are still on it now had just joined also. So you had Jim Criswell, who has an architecture background, and he's still one of our board members. He had just recently joined. And after that first meeting, and they read the financials, and we had a couple bills, and we really didn't have much money in the bank, and we didn't really have much of a direction, and we were more focused on the event center side and trying to pull revenue from an event center that had some plans to it, but nothing concrete. And I didn't know Jim Criswell at the time. Now Jim and I are very good friends, but I didn't know Jim Criswell at the time. I called him, kind of pulled him off to the side afterward, and I go, we've got some openings on this board. There's a couple empty slots. Let's try to fill this with some people. And so he and I both went out and started talking, and I took my old forensics and debate coach, Daryl Harbaugh, to lunch, and I said, listen, let's have a conversation about this Midland Theater. Daryl used to be a projectionist, not only at the Midland Theater, but also at the Drive-In Theater, which at one point was owned by Tal and Pearl Richardson also.
Okay.
And Daryl knew Pearl very, very well, and he said, I'm just now retired. I don't know if I really want to take this on. And I said, I think it'll be fun. We'll have fun with it. And now here we are, almost 10 years later. And Daryl Harbaugh is our interim theater manager, and Jim Criswell is on our construction committee. We have several board members who have joined us probably around like 2017, 2018. Denise York has been incredible for us. She's just a wealth of knowledge on project management, and she sits on our construction committee and is our treasurer. We've got Grant Hendricks, Cindy Price. We've got board members. Wyatt Starnes is our tourism director here in Coffeyville, and he's on the board. Madison Bowman. I'll probably miss somebody trying to run through the names. David Johnson, another Coffeyville born and raised native, and has come back to put time and effort and love back into Coffeyville. I've got, I'm trying to think of, I'm running through the list, and I'm just like, we've got so many incredible board members.
And the community support now is really
community
focused.
Support has been incredible. So in those early years, 2016, 2017, there were so many of us that sat on the board at that time, and we said, it's really hard to go to a donor and say, hey, we have this idea. We want to take the Midland and we want to make it into a movie theater and a multi-purpose event space once again. But first, we're going to take your money and we're going to put it in the event space because, that's where we think we see the money. And the conversation was always a resounding no, I don't want my money to go there. Okay. My memory is tied to the Midland. I would like to make the donation and have it go to the Midland. Yeah. So we started kind of getting a little bit of that feedback and listening to it. And we said, well, why don't we switch the tables here and flip-flop where we're putting our focus? Yeah. So at that time, we completely put the event center side kind of a little bit on the back burner and said, let's focus on the theater itself. We at the time were working with Heckman Architects out of Independence. He had been contracted before my time on the board, and he was doing good work for us. And so we continued to work with him, and we said, we're going to focus on the first steps in this process. And we all kind of went to the table and started thinking about let's educate ourselves on how we do a historic theater. I had never run a historic theater. I'm not an architect. I'm a marketing background. So I'm looking at it from let's put the publicity, out there. Let's get the community informed that we're ready to roll with this. We're going to focus on the Midland. We're going to, take care of your memories and your nostalgia when you walk into the theater. We're going to bring it back to you,
What year is this?
This is like 2017, let's say.
Okay.
And so at that time,
is this the spark then
this
that got
is the
us
spark.
to where we're
This
at
is
today?
kind of the spark.
Okay.
So we educated ourselves on getting involved with like the Kansas Historic Theater Association, listening to what other theaters had done with renovations and restoration and kind of getting that spark going.
Okay.
Our theater members, we went and visited the Fox Theater in Pittsburgh, which has done a similar effort. We went and saw a Miami, Oklahoma theater. We've had board members go all the way to McPherson and Hayes, Kansas to visit theaters, doing what maybe they're in the middle of their capital campaign, or maybe they've already reopened. The McPherson Opera House is one that's already reopened, and we started looking and learning from what they had done and what was successful to their efforts, and that kind of was the spark of it. We started small, and we knew that there were years of people that were frustrated with the lack of progress. Yeah. So we kind of held an open forum, if you want to call it. We held it at the Liberty Room at the time it was the Sleep Inn and Suites, and now it's the Best Western. And we invited people to come in and meet the board members and ask us questions. And we kind of just laid our cards out on the table, and we said, we're going to start this capital campaign fresh. We really don't have a ton of money in the bank at this time. It's 2016, 2017. And
was there any capital programs before that?
There were, and those funds had been used to fix certain aspects of the theater. And everything from the glass frontage on the Alamo building that, potential event center. They had put those glass windows on there. They had done some work to the outside and to the roof of the Midland. They had done some initial work in the ballroom. So those funds were all put to good use. It's just nothing that was fluid to get us to the end goal of reopening the theater.
You drive by and you see something, you don't know what's happening on the inside.
Yes, exactly.
That can be challenging. But
yes.
So what point then did you make the decision of we're going to redo the front of the Midland? Because today, like
absolutely.
you said, you drive by, you see,
That was a strategic thing, but it was also a safeguarding measure. So around 2017, we applied for the Kansas Historical Society's Heritage Trust Fund grant. That was really that ultimate spark that got us moving, and the community really almost rallying behind us was that initial thing we did. We needed to safeguard the integrity of the historical aspects of the inside of the theater. So because of water damage, because of leaks that were happening. And if you go in right now to the Midland, obviously we've done some efforts in the front of the house, but the ultimate auditorium, when you walk in there and you look up at the ceiling, crown molding has fallen down. There have been major leaks through those early years with the roof. When I say early years, I mean the early years of the foundation, of course. Yeah. And so you look up and you're thinking, oh gosh, we've got a lot of work ahead of us. But what we had to do was make sure the outside of the building was secure. And they had a grant called the Heritage Trust Fund grant with a particular piece called Secure the Shell. Okay. And what that means is you're actually securing the outside of the building. So we worked toward it was a matching grant, and we knew what we had to raise was about $90,000, and it was an 80-20 grant. So then we were going to put about 120. Well, they were going to put about 120 total. They were going to give us this amount, and we had to raise this amount, and we did it. And we did it in less than a year, which at that time we were blown away by the people that stepped up to say, this is what we were waiting on. We were waiting on the focus on the theater itself and saving the theater. Okay. So now on the flip side of it, we were also being guided by the League of Historic American Theaters and the Kansas Historic Theater Association telling us, don't do work to the outside. Your community will get confused. They'll think it's ready to be reopened. If the outside looks good, they'll assume the inside looks good. And so we were going, but we have to save the outside. So what do we do? Yeah. We decided we needed to secure the shell. So we got that grant in 2018, and then the work started on the outside of the building. We used a local contractor here with Heckman and being our architect. And then we put out competitive bids, and we went with the bid that worked best with our time frame and the dollar amount on it. And we got Decker Construction in there, and they started working on the outside of the building and the what we saw as the secure the shell.
Okay. Now this is still 2018.
This is 2018, 2019. Okay. We started working on that. It went over the course of several months, and they worked on the masonry. They worked on some of the windows in the front. They worked on the tuck points and the edging. They looked at our roof and assessed our roof, and at that time the roof is fine. I believe prior to the Midland forming a foundation, the city actually helped with putting the roof on.
Okay.
So there was some work done even before the foundation took over, just to safeguard that building and make sure that, that it would stand for several more years. Yeah. So that initial step of securing the building was great because we stopped having additional water damage. Now, the water damage that had already been done needed to be worked on. And so we started looking at, okay, how are we going to do this? When we start telling people this is going to take millions of dollars, their eyes glaze over and go, oh gosh, this is going to take you years and years. So we turned it into, at that time, Peggy Steele Olson, who sits on our board still, she joined the board in about 2017, and she helped us with our initial fundraising. And at that time, she was also working on her neighborhood initiative on 9th Street. And so she was garnering a lot of support from people, seeing her good work go into the 9th Street project, the neighborhood initiatives, the Fresh Start Youth Garden. She had another property that she was helping put in, kind of like an orchard and a seating area. And she was doing a lot of those efforts alongside what she was doing with the Midland. And she said, we need to really reassess what we're doing right here and look at how we can get people in the theater safely and also fundraise at the same time. And so she came up with this, what we call the fund, build, use method. And so we would pick a project and we would fund that, and then we would have the construction work on that piece. And when it was done, we would use it. And that's how we tackled the front of the house and the stage. So that was another ultimate spark that ignited this fire.
Then people can come in and now see, put their hands on, look at it, which gets you more excited.
Yes.
Back to the frustration of people driving by and wondering if anything's ever happening.
Yeah. And that frustration has continued today. And I've told people, and when I see comments on Facebook now, I tell people, don't get frustrated. Don't spread, the rumors that are false or these half-truths and these assumptions. Come in and see the theater. We can show you what's been done, and we can walk you through the financials of where we've been and where we are now. So with this fund, build, use plan, we broke it down into 4 different steps just with the theater. And we said, okay, that first step is going to be the secure the shell, which was marked off and completed. So the next step is going to be the front of the house. The third step will be the backstage. And then the final step, the fourth phase of this, will be the auditorium.
Where are we at today?
We're on the auditorium.
So you're saying this was 4 stages, and we're at the last stage.
And we're at the last stage. So in working with the front of the house, we fundraised and paid for, whether through grants or private donations, we fundraised around $750,000 for the front of the house. And then an additional $111,000 for stage work that needed to be done. And then our plan with that was, we can have people stand on the stage is secure, people can look into the auditorium and see that next piece that's coming. And we can bring people into the front of the house, and we can open those doors to the auditorium, and we can show them, this is next. See what we've already done. This is what's coming next. So it's been a game-changing approach to how we managed those projects.
So here you are. What was that? So 2006. So you're 20 years since someone said, let's open the doors back up.
Right.
So it's taken some time, but we're at phase 4.
We're at phase 4. We're in the final stretch.
And so if someone says, why are we, is this just so some people can see a movie again? Like what's the why? Why are we doing something like this? Why is there a group of people in this community so concerned with it and restoring this?
Right. I kind of go back to my own self on this, because when I wanted to move back to Coffeyville, it wasn't, there were so many factors that played into it, but my husband and I moved back and we started a family, and I want my kids to have these amenities and these quality of life aspects that we had when I was a kid, that I want them to be able to have those memories and be able to say, oh, I want to take I want to go to the Midland, I want to watch a matinee, and I want to sit in the audience and I want to watch a movie, and not have to always drive to Tulsa or Bartlesville or Wichita or Kansas City to experience those aspects of life. Yeah. I want to be able to open those doors and bring in the school district and have them sit in the theater with there's 770 seats in the theater right now. There's about 800 when we're done with the auditorium. We'll have around 700, and let's ballpark at 750 seats. So let's bring over the kindergarten through second graders and have them watch a movie in the Midland Theater and serve them popcorn and those kind of experiences.
What's so crazy about that, I think this is countrywide, is we had these and we've experienced it as kids, but since that there's this generational change, and that's large shopping centers, and that's online, and that's social media, and so we've started having this gap. Yep. And I feel like what you're bringing back is you're not bringing something new.
Nope, it's not a new idea.
This how life was.
Yes.
And we've become so detached. And you have a group of people that are coming together and
it's that
and
community,
accomplishing something.
That community feel. And there is something about sitting in a movie theater or seeing a live performance and having that shared experience. I took my daughter to see Wicked at the Tulsa PAC, and she had never been to a live performance of that magnitude before, and she was enthralled. And when everyone else was laughing or clapping, she's looking around and she's laughing and clapping with them. And that shared experience is something that I feel is just, let's bring it back. With the Midland, we can have, because we have the stage, because we'll have the technology to have a digital movie projector, and we'll be able to show like a live performance. We could have a traveling Broadway show come through. We can have a concert. We can bring back those shared experiences and revive that community feel in Coffeyville. There's also an aspect of economic development in downtown Coffeyville. I think everyone wants to see a bustling downtown in Coffeyville again. And I think
a place to come experience community, to get out, to walk around, not shop from my phone sitting on a couch.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to mention a few things here that I think are interesting. Maybe I'm tying something together that doesn't exist, but the Midland Theater has been doing Vaught in the Ville now as both a fundraiser and I believe leading up to someday it's going to happen in the Midland, which will be so exciting. So I've been twice now in Vaught in the Ville, and I don't mean any offense by this for the people that came, but the predominant age of the people in there are probably those who were,
they have their memories tied to the Midland.
So how do you bridge that gap?
How do we bridge the gap?
How do we get those students? How do we get the younger people to say, this is an experience I want to come get, versus, again, sit on the phone and watch a movie or, our social media, what it's done for us. So where's the switch there? How do we get that?
So we have a programming committee on the Midland Theater, and because we don't have the auditorium yet, our programming committee has been chomping at the bit to get activities and events in the Midland, and we've been kind of reining them in a little bit, trying to tell them, just wait until we have the auditorium, and then you can do this. We can work with not only Coffeyville Community College, but USD 445, Boys and Girls Club. We can bring in the children in our community to say, let's experience these things. And one thing that we've seen working in other theaters like ours is bridging that gap between the community entities and saying, let's bring in the community theater. And now all of a sudden, you have 700 seats that you can fill with parents and grandparents and friends and neighbors and relatives. And we can fill this space with a community theater effort. We can revive kind of the cultural arts in Coffeyville and bring all of these different aspects of live music and performances back into this. I imagine having the Coffeyville City Band, sitting in front and doing a live performance on stage and incorporating those two both into it again. I think when you bring those different aspects together and the different dynamics, I think you'll see a transition in Coffeyville. I want to see children's theater again. We missed out on it this past summer. I want to see it, and I want to see it back better than ever. And I think having a home base for it with the Midland is going to be key to that. I think that you're right. I mean, Vaudeville, and there's no offense taken because I probably sold most of those tickets to most of the people in that audience, and I know most of them. But I want to see the kids in the community coming to downtown to watch a movie.
That next generation.
And
part of that is a torch to keep that living because, in 1928, we're almost at 100 years.
Yep. And when you talk to people in the community, they say we're missing things like that, right? They say, what do we have for our families and what do we have for our kids? We need more things like a movie theater. Well, the Midland can bring that. They can bring more than that. It can bring something to every generation. You can have music and concerts. We can do comedy nights. We can do, and Vaudeville, we've had Mark Mayfield, who is a Caney native, and he's gone and done amazing things with his comedy career. We could have a night with Mark Mayfield, and he would come and donate his time and stand on that stage. I think, Mark, you've heard that, right? You're going to donate your time. He can come and stand on that stage and do a whole comedy night. Lindsay Euler Goldap from Texas, she's born and raised Coffeyville. She's gone off and done amazing things in her career with improvisational theater. But not only that, she has an aspect of therapy that goes into it. And so we've talked about one day when the Midland opens, we want you to do a workshop on this stage teaching children how to cope with anxiety and maybe other mental health issues, and working with them with improvisational theater to help them process their emotions through improvisational theater. And she's worked with people down in Texas at her Stomping Grounds Comedy Theater. It's a nonprofit down in Texas. And she's seen incredible results with helping people through improvisational theater. And so we're like, when we get the theater open, come back and do a workshop here in Coffeyville and bring the kids to the theater that could benefit from this.
Yeah. I think, not a doctor, not an expert on this, but, COVID came and pretty much everybody today remembers COVID and what that did. And I think what we learned out of that is coming back to that social activity and getting out and seeing people. And that in itself is a form of, reduced stress.
Absolutely.
Coming and community and being around people and engaging with them. You talked about your daughter who first time coming to the show and just the excitement
looking around,
of
the excitement, the
people
feeling.
interacting together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. So fourth stage, 100 years is coming up.
Absolutely.
What is the board position today to get to that 100 years?
Right.
Can we open by 100 years?
Oh, that's our plan. So right now we've seen a lot of success with when we reopened the front of the house. That included kind of our lobby, our restrooms, which I do want to take a second to talk about the restrooms because I mentioned this earlier, but when the Midland was open, the only restrooms were upstairs. And we had to be an ADA accessible space, we had to open restrooms on the first floor. And it was a cool story at the time. We opened, we were working with the architect and trying to decide how we would add these restrooms into the front of the house when there was not an area available.
You're required to now, building
right.
code,
We were
else.
looking at it and we were like, well, we can't just, blow down walls because it's a historic building. And everything that we do, because we're listed on the historic register, has to be approved by the Kansas Historical Society so that we remain a historic space. Okay. We're listed on national and historic levels. And so we were looking at how do we add these restrooms in? And one of our emeritus board members, Ron Bryce, he and his wife were driving down to Texas. And I think it was Lydia who said, well, what about those offices that sit at the front of the Midland? And when you look at the Midland, there are 2 office fronts that sit right on either side of the main doors in the ticket booth. And originally, those were like back in the 1920s through probably the 60s, it was like a lawyer's office and a beauty parlor, and they're just one-room offices, but they each had a bathroom in there. And so Lydia was like, well, why are you trying to go into this next door space and make a hallway and a corridor? Why don't you just go underneath?
Use what you have.
Just go into those offices. Well, there were 2 staircases on either side of when you walk through the lobby and you walk into the concession area, there's the 2 staircases that take you up to the ballroom. And we were thinking, how do we do this? So we called our architect and talked to the contractor, and we were like, is this even possible? Because this could be a game changer for us, especially with grant funding, because we were looking at 2 separate buildings and trying to rehab a restroom in this Alamo building. But if we could make it all one project and put the restrooms in there, that could really make our grant and our applications and speaking to donors way more attractive. So we took that idea that Lydia had on a whim, and the architect and the contractor and everyone got together and kind of looked at the walls, and they were like, we can make this happen. That's a great idea. Let's make this happen. So now when I take people into the front of the house, I always tell them, we're really proud of our restrooms. You should check out our bathrooms. Come see those first. Not only were they expensive, but they're also 4-stall restrooms that we tried to make look as close to the 20s, 30s, 40s era that we possibly could. Everything that we've done in that front of the house was meticulous in thought process of the color scheme. I mean, we had, the designer in there chipping away at the paint to get down layers upon layers of paint through the years to see what that original color was, or as close to possible. We used a Sherwin-Williams historic paint palette to paint everything inside the front of the house. We repainted the gold, crown molding, and repainted the doors. And then when we went into those restrooms, they're now 4-stall restrooms in both the men's and women's sides. We redid the restrooms upstairs, so now those are kind of a unisex restroom upstairs, or like a family-style restroom in both of those. We have 2 offices upstairs. We have the ballroom. We have a completed and reconstructed concession stand, which was kind of a puzzle when we started working on that. It was, we wanted to keep the look of it so that when someone walked in and remembered getting, a cherry mash or a popcorn, or I think everyone loved like the pickles that they used to get at the concession stand. And they remember going up there and what it felt like to stand there with their money in their hand and, and buy all of that at a concession stand. And we did not want to take away from their memories. So we told the contractors, you have to keep this identical. And they looked at us and said, okay, but it's in bad shape. It's in rough shape. We cannot keep the metal that's here existing. We've got to rebuild this. And so we told them, rebuild it as close as you possibly can. And they took it apart like a puzzle and then rebuilt it with the new metal and new glass, or I should say the existing metal of the front of it, new metal on the back side where they had like an ice booth, like an ice bucket, and the concession pop stand and all of that. So they put all those pieces back together, and it really was like a puzzle. We had a local carpenter in here, and every day I would go in and just check to see progress, and he'd be like, well, I figured out where this piece went. So it was kind of cool. But when we were working on all of this, a fun story that came out of it was they had knocked down a wall to get into what would be the corridor to the restroom on the men's restroom side. And you would have never found this had the wall stayed intact. They knocked down the wall, and 17 wallets fell out and onto the floor. and the contractor was like, well, this is an odd one. And he picked it up and he was looking through it, and he was like, well, there's no money in these wallets, but there is license and bank passes and little bank cards and social security cards and photos. There were letters to people that people had put in their wallets. There was even a letter on the art of kissing, and someone had made their own rule list on how to kiss. The art of kissing.
They were preparing to come to the theater
to get that first kiss. On their first date, probably, to come to the theater. And our board member, Cindy Price, who is an incredible photographer, she actually has done an archive of all of these. She took photos of every wallet and everything that was in each one of them. And We don't know the story. There is no one that we've been able to talk to that worked at the theater. And these were all from the 1950s, all the wallets. And we don't know the story behind it, but we imagine that someone sat down in their seat and their wallet probably fell out and they didn't notice it until they left. And they came back later saying, "Hey, I think I lost my wallet. Did you find it?" And the janitor, or maybe the one of the concession workers probably said, "Nope. Didn't find it."
Haven't seen it.
Took the money out of it and then threw it behind kind of a 2x4 in this old janitor's closet that would have fallen behind bricks. And we would have never found it had we not gone into those restrooms. Right. So it's a cool story. We actually had the news station from Tulsa came down and did a story and met with Irene Crandall. She attends my church, and her husband's bank book, I think, or passbook.
So we found people that
were attached to these it was a great story. And the reporter asked her, "Well, I'm noticing in this bank book, he took out a large withdrawal at this time period. Would he have been buying you a wedding ring?" And she said, and she laughed and she goes, "No, he bought himself a car." It was a cute story, but I know it brought joy to Irene. And I know those stories and that history that's wrapped into those walls, literally wrapped into the walls, they have brought joy to a lot of people. And
that's the whole Midland, the
that's
whole
the
building.
Whole point of it.
Yes, you're bringing back that joy.
We're bringing it back.
Yeah.
So our plan is, right now, we have finished the front of the house and it is open and we are renting it out for private parties, and we've been very popular with baby showers and bridal showers. So
in that ballroom you talked about.
Yes, in the ballroom upstairs. And so these private parties have been incredible for us. People come into the theater and they look around and they talk about how beautiful it is. The stained glass windows in the upstairs provide this amazing light during the daytime hours. And so the photos you can get from that room alone are just beautiful. And I think that's the reason why a lot of these women that are having the bridal showers and baby showers are like, they walk in that room and they see it and they go, "Yeah, we can work with this." Yeah. And then we've actually had a wedding and a wedding reception in that space. And people walk in there and then their next question is, "Well, how do we get into the auditorium?" Yeah. And so
that's phase 4.
We're
down to the last phase.
We're down to the last phase.
What is it going to take to complete
So it's going to take a few million, right? Right.
Is that all?
That's
just
all.
A few million.
Just a few million. But when we say a couple million, what we really mean to tell people is it's not what's going to take it to get you in the space. We're anticipating around $1 million to get you in the space and to sit in there and to be for it to be safe, right? No crown molding falling on your head, and nothing like that happening. And the seats will be redone. What we anticipate is the technology for the level of performances that we want to have in the space. And we're not talking like Tulsa PAC or go to New York and watch a Broadway movie or a show. We're talking, you can come in and you can listen and hear everything properly. We've had a company from Kansas City come down to do the acoustic testing, so that when we get to this part of the phase of the technology, we do it right. And I think that's been the approach since I joined the board in 2016, has been, let's make sure we're doing everything well and right.
So how are you going to get those couple million?
So we've applied for grants. We also have some amazing donors who have continued to help us throughout the years. The Pratt Family Charitable Fund has been an incredible donor for us throughout the years, not only in their financial support, but in the guidance that Bill and Stacy have provided for us. It's been amazing. We can call them and ask them questions on what would you do in this scenario or how would you handle this. They're both amazing people and they're very generous, but they're also incredibly intelligent people. So we have had a great relationship with them through the years. In 2024, they told us, we're going to do a matching challenge. And this was actually their second matching challenge that they had done for us. They had said, we are going to do $100,000, up to $100,000. If you can get a dollar for dollar donations, we will match it all the way up to $100,000. Mm-hmm. And they said, how much time do you think we need? And to really do this, like, when should we kick this challenge off and how should we do it? And we said, well, we were really ambitious. I think more than anything, they were trying to encourage people in the community that maybe couldn't give thousands of dollars, but could give 20 or 100, they were like, we'll match it. Your 20 becomes 40, your 100 becomes 200. So they were really encouraging to the community. And we were able to do that within 2 months to raise full match. So when it all said and done, we raised $200,000 from that campaign alone. We also went to the state of Kansas and we applied for the Community Service Project tax credits. And those tax credits, which this could be a whole nother podcast, was tax credits. I learned a lot about tax credits, and I am not a financial person at all. So the way that those tax credits works was really interesting. It's a fundraising initiative. So we applied, and we had to show that we would be somewhat successful. We had to show pledges of if we were to get these tax credits, and we had to put, it was a very lengthy application. And when we found out about it, from the time we found out that this even existed and that we would be eligible for it to the time we had to submit the application, we had like 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, I was on the phone nonstop with people saying, if I could get these tax credits for the Midland in like $200,000 amount, would you donate? And could you write me a letter? And I had 25 different pledges. We could meet half of what we were asking for, and we felt like this was a really good amount. We were applying for $200,000, and the state of Kansas deemed us, put a stamp on it, and we're like, we're going to award you this amount. Let's see what you can do with it. So they gave us $166,600 in tax credits, and that actually translates, because you have to do it in reverse. You have to fundraise $238,000 to then give back $166,600 in tax credits.
Complicated process.
It was very complicated, and thank goodness we have Grant Hendricks and Denise York sitting on the board, and incredible people financially. So it was great because they were the ones who sat in on these webinars and learned how they worked, and they gave me enough knowledge to be the salesperson. And so we've been really successful with those. So not only have we raised we still have a little bit left in tax credits for 2025, but we were very successful in 2024 with our tax credits. And we raised about $100,000 in those. And so we had, going into 2025, a little over $100,000 left. And we're whittling those down right now. And we still have the rest of 2025 to use those as a fundraising initiative for that. We've also worked with the city of Coffeyville and Amber Dean on some grants that we have going out for community development block grants. And through the grants and the donations, that is our plan of attack, is just to whittle down this giant number and
to 28.
To 2028.
3 more years here.
Exactly. Okay. And our goal is, we have taken the entire project and brought it down to a more manageable number of 4 projects. But because the auditorium is so large, we've taken that down and put it into more manageable projects. So what is our first steps? We are now working with an architect out of, John Heckman retired. So we decided to go with a partner with the Kansas Historic Theater Association, and his name is Luke Scott. He's our principal architect out of Wichita, WDM, and he has worked with theaters across Kansas doing exactly what we're doing. And that knowledge that he brings to the table and that experience has taken us to another level. I mean, we have been able to look at the acoustics in a different way and talk about the ADA accessibility that goes into the actual auditorium. So we're taking all of those and breaking it down. Our goal is to get people inside the theater to watch a show in 2028. Now, if we go past 2028 and we don't have the exact technology we want in there, but we've still gotten you in the space, we've met our goal.
Yeah. You've got to win then.
We've got to win.
So if people are watching this and saying, how can I help? What can I do? Can I participate? How can the community help? So
one of the easiest ways is to go to our Facebook page, like it, follow our stories, and if you want to get involved, this is a non-monetary way that you can help the Midland, is to, leave positive comments when we put our information out there, to share what we're talking about, to ask questions, to ask for a tour. We are always available for tours. One of the best things that has happened is with Brewfest and Dalton Defender Weekend happening in October, we have opened our doors on those weekends and just said, it's like an open house. Come in, check out what we're doing, talk to one of our board members. All of our board members are very knowledgeable on our efforts and everything that's going on right now. And it's been a game changer to get those people inside to see the progress.
And those are things I've heard. It's like, money pit, who knows what's happening in there? No, that has changed for a few years now.
Yes.
Come in, see what we've done.
Come in and see what we've done. Yeah. Another piece of the puzzle that has been an aspect that people can get involved in is to make a donation on match day. So in 2016, 2017.
What is match day?
Yeah. Coffeyville Area Community Foundation in Coffeyville has been a partner for us since about 2016, 2017. They've been in the community much longer, but the Midland kind of, I want to say, joined forces. Okay. Janie DeVore-Gillis and Samantha Kudrick run the Community Foundation here in Coffeyville. And through their guidance and just the wealth of knowledge that they have for donors and grants and grant writing, they have helped us take it and push the envelope, I guess you would say, on who we're reaching and our message, and helping us to translate this fund, build, use plan into kind of a workable action. Janie DeVore-Gillis has been wonderful to tell us, hey, you're doing this really well. And, what I'm hearing is, your donors want to see this in action, or they want to hear this message, and they want to hear the memories, or, you need to hit the nostalgia ties more. And so we've been taking that advice and really taking it to heart and making sure that we're putting out all that information. Every November, CACF, the Coffeyville Area Community Foundation, holds a match day. And funds that are managed through the Coffeyville Area Community Foundation, if you have an endowed fund there, you are eligible to participate in what they call match day. And it's a 1 day of giving that people from all over, anywhere, whether you are, don't know Coffeyville at all, but want to give to something amazing, or you're a born and raised
lived
Coffeyville.
Here and don't live here anymore.
Past residents, people that were born here and moved away, but still have those emotional ties and connections to the town. This is their way that they can give back. Last year, there were like 30 organizations listed on Match Day that you could donate to, and Midland has been one for the past several years. And thankfully, because of our community coming together, we have been one of the highest in donor numbers and also highest in donor amounts.
Okay.
So we have been kind of at the top of the leaderboard. And that feeling, when the first year that we were involved in it, we didn't raise a ton of money through Match Day. It was enough that, we felt like it was a big amount. It was 2017. It was maybe like 13,000. And we were just over the moon. And that included the match. And we were like, oh my gosh, we're going to do it. Well, 13,000 doesn't get you to, $2-3 million. But over the last few years, that number has gone to like new heights. And we last year raised well over 100,000 in that 1 day. Wow. And we had the matching funds that came in, but also just the good publicity of all of those dollars coming together for Coffeyville for good, positive change.
Yeah.
Everything from the Midland to the animal shelter to this Charlesworth swimming pool to the band boosters. The high school band boosters have an account there. There are so many good things, Boys and Girls Club. And it all comes together for Coffeyville. And so when you look at that amount of dollars, I think last year was like 500,000 that came into Coffeyville in 1 day, with all the different organizations and all the matching funds that CACF manages. It was like over 500,000. And I think that's the piece of Coffeyville that I have loved watching, is not just that the Midland got this amount of money, but that these people believe in Coffeyville and they want to see good. And that's what the Midland is trying to do, is we're trying to bring something good back to the community. And it's not a divisive, subject. It shouldn't be anything people are upset about, because we're a group of all volunteers coming together, trying to do something amazing for this town.
Yeah. Awesome. Last question I have for you. Kind of a fun question. If budget wasn't a matter, because you don't have to worry about money, what would be that one act or movie or whatever it would be that you would want to see at the Midland?
Oh, man. Me personally, or me for the community?
You personally.
Personally. I mean, I've got a lot of ideas, a lot. One of the first things that I want to do is I want to put Vaudeville on the stage at the Midland, and I want to pack the house with 700 people. I also want to have, I want to see a children's theater performance. And I know that those aren't things that necessarily bring all the money in and that are going to keep the lights on at night, but I want to see that house packed with parents and grandparents and friends. And I want to see those little kids on stage. I don't know, Little Mermaid, do Disney Junior Little Mermaid on that stage. And I want to see that performance right there. When we were practicing for Vaudeville this year, we needed a place to practice what we called our Pearls Girls. And these are high school girls that perform with RNS Studios out of Independence. And actually, 6 of them are all from Coffeyville. There were 8 total. 6 of them are all from Coffeyville. And they're going to be sophomores and juniors in high school. And these girls are trained ballerinas. They're in the dance classes in Independence. They know tap, they know jazz, and they were our Pearls Girls. And we were looking for a place to perform and rehearse before we had the big Vaudeville at the CCC Theater. And I was sitting there thinking, I was like, well, I guess I could have them in the church basement, or I could take them to this place, or maybe we could borrow go to Independence and perform. And Daryl Harbaugh goes, why wouldn't we just use the stage at the Midland? And I don't know why my brain wasn't even thinking about it, but I was like, you're right, we can. We put those girls on the stage at the Midland to rehearse. They were there 2 days a week for 3 weeks performing. And I have videos of them up there on that stage. And just the vibe, the feeling of watching them perform on the Midland stage was what this is all about.
Yeah.
And not only that, and this is me just, I guess, being selfish, but one day I had to have my kids with me because I didn't have a childcare. Actually, one of the babysitters was one of the dancers because, it's a small town. Yeah. And they got up there to perform, and my daughter, not knowing any of the moves, she's 5, she got up there to dance with them, my youngest, and she was just following along and trying to keep up with them, and she was spinning around, and I was trying to get her off of the stage, and I was like, no, Vivian, get back over here. You're distracting them. And one of the moms grabbed me and goes, don't you dare touch her. She's fine. But after it was over and I had the video of it, I was like, this is it. This is what we want. We want that laughter and that, this is so cute. We want those moments again of that shared experience. And talking to the moms that were watching it, they were like, the vibe I'm getting right now in this theater with the girls dancing and just the historical relevance of this theater, this is what this is all about.
Well, I really like that shared experience. I think that's that whole thing is. And that's something that's going to be shared with the whole community and those who can just look at the community because they've left, or those who are going to come to our community. What a shared experience. So
rebuilding something that we deserve. Coffeyville deserves nice things, and we deserve this.
Yeah, and people are putting into it. Here you are.
Yeah.
Down to that 4th phase, the community has shown up.
Our donors, I can't thank them enough. I can't list them all right now. It's been, I've made so many renewed connections with people that maybe I knew in my childhood or that I didn't know at all. People that have messaged me saying, hey, you're doing good work. Like, you tell your board, you guys are doing amazing work in Coffeyville, and we're so proud of you. And maybe they don't live here anymore. Maybe their lives took them in other places, or maybe they do live here and they see that this group of people have come together. And since 2004, we've been fighting to keep this place alive and reopen it and restore it. And it's not for any one of us. It's for the entire community. Yeah. And it will be a wonderful place for all these shared experiences. And it is going to be a movie theater. Once again, I always try to remind people of that. We will have movies. Yeah. We will have music. We will have concerts, magic, comedy, we'll bring it all to the table.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, any last thoughts, things you want to say to someone that's listening? We've gone through the history, some of the why. We're getting close to the end.
I just encourage people to show up. I think more than anything, whether it's a donation or coming by when we're open on Brewfest for an open house. If you are
liking
someone
Facebook,
liking the Facebook page, show up in a positive way for our community. We all get on social media these days and we see the negative. Just show up in a positive way for our community. and fight for what's good and what's right. And this is something that I think we can all agree with will be another shared treasure for another 100 years if we can reopen it.
Yeah, not if.
But when.
Yeah.
It's happening.
It's happening.
It's happening.
I think that's
We
just a perfect
should
example.
Start construction this year we're hoping once we get bids and everything in, it might be closer to the start of 2026, but all of these things take time and we ask people to be patient with us, but just show up to be positive. Show up and take a tour.
Well, and I've only been, this area, Coffeyville, for 14, 15 months now. And there's so many amazing things happening.
Yes.
I think the Midland Theater is definitely a catalyst for the good things that are happening in this community. I think people are catching that vision. So encouraging that positivity, look for the good things. We have so many good things.
We have so many good things. We want to have an event at the Midland every weekend. We want to make it so that way people are like, God, I've been at the Midland like 4 times this month. There's been something every night. We want people to get so tired of hearing about the good things that are happening at the Midland, because we're running events all the time. That's where we want to be. When we open the doors, our plan is to let those programming committee members loose on the world. They'll be bringing in all kinds of different acts and traveling shows. And that's what we want, is to fill that house. Selfishly, I'd love to have, a really cool concert on that stage. Let's bring the band Kansas to Coffeyville. Phil Ehart, the drummer, was born in Coffeyville. He considers Coffeyville his home. He worked with Coffeyville Coffee Company to develop a bag of coffee called Wayward Son, and $4 of every bag of that coffee goes back to the Midland Theater. And he has said
Where do people get that bag?
That's at Coffeyville Coffee Company or at Hirsch's in downtown Coffeyville on 9th Street. And those relationships that we've built with people from all different walks of life, and Phil Ehart has said, I'm going to make it there one day. I'm going to come back and I'm going to be there. And I'm like, bring your drums and let's put you on the stage. Awesome. So it's just, the Midland can bring people together. And I think that is what I want people to take away from this.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. This has probably gone on way longer than anticipated. But if you ever want to go to the Midland and take a tour, I would invite anybody just to reach out to us on Facebook. We can walk you through and
show the work that's been done.
Show the work that's been done.
Fourth phase. We're almost there.
Almost there. Line. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone, thanks for joining A Cup of Coffeyville. Really want to thank Lisa, the Midland board. I've been in that building several times, and it is really amazing. So go out there. Be positive, like their Facebook page, engage with them. We also love for you to engage with our podcast. We're going to keep finding interesting things happening in Coffeyville and get you information. So thanks so much. Okay, that's a wrap.